No role plays, no conference calls, no BS. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader. This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And welcome to this week's Thoughtful Thursday. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube at Hacking Your Leadership and leave us a review on iTunes. On this Thoughtful Thursday, I want to start by playing a clip that I saw on LinkedIn of a person talking. This is Brian Fretwell. He's a keynote speaker, an author, and a consultant. And he says something that was kind of profound and kind of stuck out with me. So I want to play that real quick, and then we can discuss it.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
So I just talked to a leader who said his team is much more successful working together since they switched from talking about goals to talking about impact. He said whenever they would talk about goals, he noticed that less than half of the group was engaged in the conversation, and he started to worry that some of the people didn't understand how important they were to the organization. So he began by asking questions like, who made your job easier this week, and whose job did you make easier this week? And then he would change it up by asking, who helped you this week, or who did you help this week? Who motivated you this week, or who did you motivate? Who made you happy, and who did you make happy? And initially, people would only talk about who impacted them, but over time, they learned to look for opportunities to impact others and were proud about making people happier or their job being easier. He said, talking about goals is important, but the more people understand, own, and take pride in their impact, the more goals everyone has to celebrate.
Okay, so the first thing I think when I hear this is, about maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I started hearing something from people that was a little bit of a change, and it was kind of rare at first, but now it's really ubiquitous. And this is, if I do something for someone, whether it's big or small, someone used to say, thanks, I appreciate it. And now they say, thanks, I appreciate you. But appreciating what somebody does and appreciating them, they are very different things. And so, if you're going to use one or the other, make sure you mean whatever it is that you're saying. Yeah. Don't overdo it, of course. But what he says when it comes to impact versus goals, it makes a lot of sense. Goals are really impersonal, and how you impact somebody or how you were impacted positively, that's a really big thing. I would go as far as to say that the more positively you impact people you work alongside, and the more you can speak to how positively they impact you, even though those aren't necessarily the goals themselves, you're more likely to accomplish your goals if you have really great instances of all of that, throughout the week or throughout the month.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talk a ton about just high-performing teams and teamwork and culture and that type of thing. And I think that when there's a genuine appreciation for each other, and again, you can be appreciative of a task and you can thank somebody for doing a thing for you. I think it to your point, if it's just the words, if you just say, I'm going to change my vernacular, instead of saying, man, I appreciate it, I'm going to say, man, I appreciate you. Is that real? Is that authentic? It doesn't feel like it's like it's genuine. Now, it could be, but over time, the interactions that we have, how we treat one another, when I show you my appreciation, not just by saying it, but by providing space for us to have dialogue, by supporting you on a decision, by taking on something to help with something that you're working on. Like, now all of this sudden, those words have real meaning to them. We say, hey, I know, I appreciate you. And we have this kind of like our brain works and pulling up all the things that, that we've done and that maybe they've done for us. So I like the idea quite a bit, and I appreciate you, Chris. I appreciate the change or the perspective here in regards to thinking about how do you do things and say things that can have a much larger impact on the environments that we want to create at work.
Right, and I don't want to don't misunderstand us here. This doesn't take the place of goals, right? Like you still have to have goals, but it is short-sighted to have goals that you just focus on the goal itself. A lot of times they can be compartmentalized. You can have a goal that impacts one person. You talk about what goal you're trying to achieve. Whether or not I'm able to positively impact that goal for you is another question, but you are definitely more likely to accomplish it if you are working towards it with others working on your behalf to help you accomplish those goals, and they're more likely to accomplish their goals if they know that you're, working on behalf of their goals as well. And so, not only does it kind of allow for relationships to happen when they may not have happened, relationships that are based on that positive impact are ones that they're lasting. They're not just based on whatever the business moment is or the business need is of the moment. Saying that someone, it's like, I've been in organizations where recognition is a big thing. And so, each day or each week, you're sitting in a meeting with people and you start out by saying, hey, who do you want to recognize? It's like, well, sometimes you hear those things and the recognition that is being called out, the undertone, or you kind of read between the lines here, is the person saying it wants to get recognition for giving recognition, right? You know what I'm talking about. So saying how somebody positively impacted you is very different than trying to recognize them, because it clearly isn't about trying to get recognition for giving recognition. It's truly giving it for what it is in service of what they did for you, how they positively impacted your life. And those, it can be difficult, I think, to start a culture of that if you don't have it. But if you work at it, I think it can happen. And so what I'll ask you, Lorenzo, is I want to know about a time when you were leading a team and there were goals, but you knew for a fact that the goals would be more likely to be achieved if people were focusing on how they could positively impact each other versus just trying to accomplish those goals. So I want to ask you that, but first I want to give a word from one of our sponsors. All right, Lorenzo, when have you had to do this? When have you had to kind of get your team to focus more about how they were positively impacting each other because it was in spirit of goals, but you knew that just focusing on the goals themselves wouldn't necessarily get you the best outcomes?
I think overall, the first thing that pops into my mind is not an actual like a business metric per se, because I think that there are things that it kind of takes everybody to work together to get them. But when I think about the goal specifically around like developing leaders, when you lead teams and you have leaders of leaders, where you're looking to create some impact and consistency across the experience that leaders have when it comes to their own development, and then you have kind of leaders that have to be responsible for that. That's when I found the time that those leaders understanding the impact that they have on one another, having conversations and dialogue around things like personality types, about what do they see as each other's strengths, what are the things that they can help with one another as they are responsible for developing these leaders. Because in spaces like retail and industries like that, you have leaders that have the job of maybe like having a direct team or direct individuals that they're responsible for working with and training and developing. But then you have the day-to-day business that requires kind of all leaders to work together in this space and be conscious of what is somebody else working on or what's their goal that they're trying to achieve. And if you only operate within a silo, and you only have the goal specific to that leader, it becomes difficult because you miss out on a lot of opportunities, and you have people that need different things from different leaders. So I find myself really spending more time with impact when the goal is something like development or leadership development, where I really have to make sure that the leaders that are responsible for this collectively, understand the impact that each other has, both positively and potentially negatively, if there's gaps in their behaviors, if they're not aligned, if they're not approaching this development the same kind of way from a documentation standpoint. Like, there's just a lot of things in there where the goal is we want to develop people. But the impact that we have with one another, if it's a positive impact and we're doing well together, that will move the larger team collectively faster. If we have opportunities amongst ourselves, it's going to slow everything down.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think anytime you can impress upon people that they don't exist in a vacuum in whatever their role is, anytime that you can show them that what they do every day has a larger and broader impact, that it's not just their personal goals, which can be difficult sometimes if you're in a team where the individual goals of the people kind of make up the collective goal, and there's not a lot that is expected of each person every day in spirit of helping each other out. It's more about what can you do individually, and then together we look at what the team did. That's very different than how you can say, what are you doing to pick up the slack where someone else isn't maybe as good as you are at something, and where are you asking for help or receiving help from somebody when they are better at something than you are, and hopefully there's enough kind of give and take on the team where you have a kind of a mix of skills and abilities and strategies that come into play here, and everybody can help out each other. So it doesn't just feel like there's one person kind of carrying everything. But if you can get that right, if you can make people understand that what they do in terms of positively impacting others sometimes matters more to the team outcomes than just what they do as an individual contributor, that's when I think you get kind of this team cohesion that is, I think, really hard to get in a lot of organizations unless you start out with something like this. Like, how are you impacting others, not how are you accomplishing goals?
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And have a great day.